Hi, welcome to my channel EasyML. In the previous set of videos, we looked at the theory behind the k-means clustering algorithm. In this video, we will take a look at how we evaluate the effectiveness of cluster analysis. Now, how do we know if we have successfully deployed the k-means clustering algorithm on a particular set of observations? Well, recall in the introduction to cluster analysis video, I had mentioned that the clusters had to be as distinct as possible. For those of you who need a refresher, click on the link provided below. Now, what are the ways to evaluate whether or not clusters are distinct? The first and often the best way to evaluate distinctness of clusters is through empirical judgment. A cluster plot is the best way to visually understand whether the clusters are distinct or not. Here, in the cluster plot, we can observe that there are two distinct clusters. Let us take a look at the color legend of this cluster plot. Cluster 1 are the observations highlighted in red, and cluster 2 are the observations highlighted in blue. Whilst the cluster plot is a decent way to evaluate the distinctness of the clusters, it is only convenient for when we have a small k value, that is number of clusters, or a manageable number of observations. If we have larger data sets or a larger k value, this plot tends to get extremely cluttered. So, in that case, what do we do? Well, we then tend to look at cluster centers. If you can recall, the cluster centers are representative of the observations within a particular cluster. Hence, if the characteristics of the cluster centers are farther apart, then we can safely conclude that the clusters are distinct. Here, we can observe that based on the parameters height and weight, I have grouped a particular set of observations into two clusters. Let us take a look at the cluster center of these two clusters. Cluster 1 consists of people who approximately have a height of 150 centimeters and weight of 45 kgs. And cluster 2 consists of people who approximately have a height of 170 centimeters and weight of 81 kgs. So, the first cluster seems to have shorter people with correspondingly lower weight, whilst the second cluster seems to have taller people with relatively higher weight. Hence, we can safely say that these two clusters are distinct. Conclusively, the best way to evaluate distinctness of clusters is by looking either at the cluster plot or at the cluster centers. This brings us to the end of cluster analysis. In the next video, we will deploy the k-means clustering algorithm on the IRIS dataset in RStudio for some hands-on experience. So stay tuned. Thank you.